Welcome to the Outdoor Adventure Lifestyle Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, thrilling adventures, and expert insights from leaders and legends across the outdoor adventure community. Whether you're an avid hiker, passionate camper, or adventure traveler, each episode brings you up close and personal with guests who've lived it, explored it, and made it their mission to share their experiences with you. Let's get after it. Hello again, everyone. Today I'm talking with Dave Zoby. Dave is a freelance writer from Wyoming, and his writing appears in many of the glossy outdoor magazines. Specializing in hunting dogs, elk hunting, saltwater fly fishing, and travel, Dave's stories celebrate the joy of the natural world. Hey, Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation. I don't hunt as much as you do probably, but I fish. I don't fish as much as you do either anymore because I don't live in Bishop anymore, but I used to fly fish a lot up there, Eastern Sierra.
I would congratulate you for not fishing as much as I do. Probably leave a lot of time for you.
Yeah, it was easy in Bishop because you just walk out the back door and hit the Owens River or walk up into the mountains and find a little stream. Here, I just moved to Yucaipa a few months ago. It's a bit of a further drive to fish here. A lot of great fishing around, but still.
I'm in Casper, Wyoming, and we're famous for the North Platte River and Gray Reef. I've been here a long time. I've been here 25 years, but when I first got here, I probably spent too much time on the river and not enough on my career. I was just out there a lot, and it's a 15 to 20 mile drive to some of the best trout fishing, that kind of trout fishing, bottom release dam, tailwater, some of the best rainbow trout fishing in the country.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. I fished there a couple times. Yeah, you're lucky. I'm envious. I'll have to come up. We'll have to do a trip up there sometime. We'll do a podcast from the river. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, that'd be a blast, actually. Yeah. So you've written for some of the top outdoor magazines. How did you first get into writing about the natural world? Was there a specific trip or story that kicked things off, or just your lifestyle?
Yeah, you might not know this about me, but I grew up on the East Coast in Newport News, Virginia, and it's a shipbuilding town. There's not a lot of public land. There's not a lot of opportunity. And I studied poetry in graduate school at ECU. It's a city. Yeah, and I always thought of the West as this untouched place. I always had these adventures I wanted to do, but I really needed to get out west and land in Laramie so that I could start doing these kinds of things. But poetry was my thing for a long time, and I wrote a poem about duck stamps and sent it to Gray's Sporting Journal, and they actually wrote me back. And this was back in the days when you used to have to take your printer and print out the poem and take it down to the mailbox and put the stamps on it and send it in. Nowadays everything's electronic submission, but Gray's actually wrote me back, which I was like, hey, this magazine, and an editor wrote me back, and then I tried.
That's one of the biggies too, right? That's you start there. There's no downside. I guess it's all down from there maybe, but
yeah, I've been lucky. I had a couple editors that liked my work there, and I've had 20 years of landing more narrative stories and more stories about not catching fish. Gray's is one of those magazines that will actually publish an unsuccessful trip and really get into the reasons why we fish and some of the reality of it. It's not all about success in that magazine. It's kind of a literary magazine. They always have poetry at the back of their issue. They're still surviving. They're growing in circulation when a lot of magazines are folding. So I'm real happy that I can land a few things in there every now and then.
Yeah, that's good. You started at the top. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I was studying poetry, and some of the poets that I really liked, James Wright, and those kinds of poets were very much into the natural world and nature and describing farmland and the way people behaved. And I wrote somewhat narrative poetry. And I think if you can write images and really think about your word choice, that serves you well when you move over into writing these larger essays.
That's the key, I think, for writing anything. I mean, if you can use words to describe the scene, you're home, right? I mean, you're great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you got to be able to see the things and feel the landscape and understand the people. So I try to do that when I'm writing.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I haven't read any of your stuff yet, but I'll have to pick some stuff up and get into it. And you've covered a wide range of topics, from elk hunting to saltwater fly fishing. How do you decide what stories to chase down, or do they give you assignments? How does that work?
I do. I worked for Visit Casper for a while, and they said we need 10 articles about this subject. And sometimes I have assignments and things like that. But the bigger pieces, the things I'm going to send to the Drake or Gray's or Big Sky Journal, a lot of times there's stories that come to me. I think about them. Maybe I don't write any notes down or anything like that, but then they continue to come back. And if a story or topic, 30 years of having a Labrador retrievers, if I wanted to write an essay about what it's like every day of my life.
That would be good. That would be good.
Yeah, every day of my life, I wake up. The first thing I do is I feed a Labrador Retriever, and I'm over 30 years. It's the
Well,
first
no, the
thing I
first thing you do is you wipe the slime off your face.
exactly
Then you feed
get them
them.
out of the bed. But if that idea keeps coming back and coming back, it's kind of like an echoey, kind of like a whisper. But this is something you need to write, and that's something those special kind of things where there's slower turnaround. I might write that essay, send it to Gray's, and it might be 18 months till it appears. Or another magazine like that is Angler's Journal. They really
Another
highly
great
thought
magazine.
out, yeah, real highly thought out, like narrative, lyrical almost essay. So every word counts and
Mm.
your word choice counts. So those kinds of things that take a lot longer. But if I want to write something quick for somebody, that's usually an assignment or something like that. And every now and then somebody comes to me. A lot of it, I'm still pitching and I'm still like looking for new places to publish.
Mm. What percentage of it is pitching versus assignments? Most of it's pitching.
Most of it's pitching.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a few editors because I've been doing this for a long time. I have a few editors I can send my work to and have a reasonable chance of landing it. But
Mhm.
as soon as it's a weird thing, as soon as you publish, you're back at square one again. I have a couple editors in the upland bird hunting, the people at Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever are people I've known for a long time, and Grays and a couple, the Drake and a couple of these magazines. They know me, so they recognize my name, and I feel like I can write a somewhat kind of informal letter. But a
Mm.
lot of times as soon as I finish one assignment, I'm back to the other and I'm back from square one.
Mm.
And I think that keeps you humble and keeps your the value and the level of your work. You got to hit it. You got to hit it. You can't be full of typos. You got to really think about your prose.
I was going to say it keeps you sharp probably because
It
it's just so
does.
many different topics, but you've got to be on your game linguistically and grammatically and all those things.
Yeah, and you got to know what's been covered. I read the magazines. A lot
Yeah,
of
got,
people want to jump in, but they don't want to have a subscription. But my house is surrounded not only with dog hair, but also magazines. I'm always reading Angler's Journal and Gray's, and I want to read what the other writers are doing, what they're saying. And then I read the books that come out when people put a collection of books together, a collection of essays together. I want to read those and see what they're doing, what's been covered, and how they're covering certain subjects.
that's pretty smart. So when do you have time to fish doing all that work?
Oh, I make time.
All right.
I do a road trip, usually to Baja. I drive down with my dog,
Oh, cool. Where do
sit
you
in
go,
the back
Baja?
of the truck. I teach at a college in central Wyoming, Casper College,
Uh-huh.
and it's right in the middle of Wyoming. It's right here near the North Platte River. And we have summers off. You can teach a summer class if you want online. I can bring my computer with me. And it's been a real nice career because they're supportive of writing, they're supportive of the humanities and that kind of stuff. And I have the summer off, so I usually will go to Alaska or Canada. And lately it's been the Baja.
Where in Baja?
I usually fish over on the Pacific side. So these
Yeah.
little lobster and abalone towns that most
Yeah,
people
yeah.
haven't heard of. Bahia Asuncion, Bahia Tortugas. Last time I was in Bahia Tortugas, the fishermen were done with the lobster season and they were collecting those sea cucumbers
Huh.
because they sell them to the Asian markets. They don't eat them themselves, but they make a lot of money with these live sea cucumbers, which I've never even thought about
Yeah.
eating. They actually dive down into the kelp and harvest these things. But there's something always going on in that town. It's
Hmm.
a very fishy place, but it's not a tourism place. It's not a place with restaurants. It's not a place
Hmm.
with top-notch hotels.
Like
You're
Ensenada
on
has become,
Starlink when you're over there.
yeah, Ensenada's probably become that. When I was at Eagle Creek, one of our factories was in Ensenada. I'd go down there a lot, but I hear now it's just cruise strip stop there, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, crazy. So you've got a knack for capturing the bond between hunters and their dogs. What draws you to that relationship? Obviously, you've got a dog, but that's interesting.
I've had three labs and I've spaced them out about 10 years apiece. When one's 10, I usually get a puppy
Smart.
because the one will be kind of retiring and you'll be able to maybe pheasant hunt for 2 or 3 hours with the older dog. Then you'll have to put the older dog back in the kennel and like maybe let the younger dog hunt. But I've always staggered them so that like I was telling you, I've done 30 years plus with a lab in the house. It's interesting because they all have different personalities.
Mm.
And when your buddies can't hunt, your dog always can go. So you
Right.
always have someone to go with.
Dog will go anywhere with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gas
And
station. We got to get gas, Dad. Okay, yeah, let's go.
yeah, it's really a great thing. I think when it clicks, when they're 2 or 3 years old, you'll see a lab, their nose kind of coming alive that season, and you'll see it clicking that they know when I'm putting on camo and vests and things like that, they smell the birds, and when they see the shotgun, they know that it's time to hunt. It really enlivens them. I've gotten to the point where if I'm going elk hunting, I need a rifle. The dog can't tell the difference between a rifle and a shotgun, so I'll put my
Oh,
dog
right.
either downstairs or out back and try to sneak the gun out to the truck because I don't want him, the one I have right now, to see even the rifle because he thinks we're going bird hunting.
Okay.
But I spent a good amount of time in North Dakota. There was a time when I had a place to hunt in North Dakota, and I had all three of my dogs got to hunt there. It's wild birds, pheasants, and sometimes Hungarian partridges, sometimes sharp-tailed grouse. But those were my formative years, and I would camp there sometimes. We'd take a truck and a camper, and then I found a kind of an Airbnb situation. But that that kind of thing, at the end of the day, you're feeding your dog, and the dog goes to sleep, you go to sleep, and you're back up the next morning. In the middle of the season when you're on that rhythm is really great.
Yeah.
My dogs also fish with me, and that's been hit or miss. I don't know if
Hmm.
there's such thing as a good fishing dog. The one I have now got ruined by one of my friends up in Alaska was tossing him small dolly vard, and they're like a little
Oh
char.
no,
And
yeah.
every time he caught a dolly vard, he'd throw it to my dog. So now, whenever I catch a trout, my dog comes in and leans in, and every picture of me with a trout, you can see black fur here and there because he's trying to see. He almost kind of points him in the water too. He'll actually lift his front paw and
Really?
just kind of stare at them because I've scolded him so many times. I'm really trying to keep him off the fish, but
Yeah.
he's really fascinated. He watches the indicator
Hmm.
when you dry fly fish, and he watches the dry
That's a
fly when you
smart
get a
dog.
hit.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
smart dog.
it's a little bit intense,
I
but
bet.
we've managed. I even take him to Baja, and this dog that I have now is about 85, 90 pounds. And you can rent a kayak in one of those little towns down there and do some saltwater kayaking. And I
Mhm.
just didn't know how I was going to go, but there's a small deck behind where the fisherman sits, and I just told him to get up there, and he got up there and sat the whole day.
Oh wow.
So he rode along and didn't
Mhm.
cause too many problems. It's kind of fun to travel with the dog. You always feel like you got somebody with you and you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a smart dog too. Dogs are great. I always traveled too much to have a dog. The dog would be alone too much, so I never got one. But
Yeah.
we had a lab when I was a kid. Great dog, black lab. Yeah, they're awesome. What makes elk hunting such a special, almost spiritual pursuit for you? Is that the terrain, the challenge, something deeper about it, the animal?
Yeah, I could talk about elk hunting a lot. I mean, I've never been hugely successful as far as like shooting the big trophies or anything like that. I've never
Hmm.
done that. But I've been, for somebody who hunts on public land, I've been really lucky and persistent in getting an elk every other year or something like that on
It's
public
pretty good.
public land. But they're very social, and so in the fall when the bulls are bugling, you can hear them. And a lot of the hunting I did all the 30 years I've been out west has been backpack hunting with a
Mm,
couple of people that are willing to do that kind of stuff. It's really hard. You got to bring a water filter because
mm,
you can't pack water into the backcountry like that. But at night, sometimes it's 9 o'clock at night, sometimes it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll hear the bulls start to bugle
right.
in September. And it's really a great thing. They're out there. You may hunt all day long and see a few tracks and you think, hey, there's no elk around here.
Yeah.
And then you hear the cows chirping maybe 100 yards away from the tent. They're very social and they make a lot of noise. The meat's incredible. Of all
Hmm.
the game that I eat, my favorite is elk.
It's
I
really
give it
good.
out as gifts. People love it. I think I've shot enough elk to where the regret is weighing heavily on me too. Because when you
Mm,
do take an animal out of a herd like that, it shouldn't go lost on you that you're taking out an individual from the group. So I've been
right.
observing that lately, and I don't know how to really say this without being like overly sentimental. It just seems to be each one weighs a little bit heavier on me as I continue on here. I still want to do it this year. I got a tag this year. I'm still gung ho about it, but
Mhm.
I like to go with other people and experience that. You'll be out in a tent, you'll get a huge thunderstorm come through, and that'll be something that you'll talk about for 20 years.
Exactly.
Packing an elk out,
Yep.
it's really difficult.
Same thing.
We have a system where we have giant coolers down in the trucks in case we do get one, and they're full of
Mhm.
ice. So you got to get the elk down there, get it cool. Then you have to go back up and usually spend the night up in the tent one more time before you come down because it is an all day thing. In
Mm,
the areas where we hunt, it's an all day, sometimes 2 day thing, getting an elk out. So it's things that you do together and you make great memories with your friends. And
mhm.
the woods smells like pine up there and the
Right,
air is
right.
crisp. Everybody's boiling because it's 80, 90 degrees in Casper when the elk season starts in September, but
Yep,
you're up in the
yep.
mountains and it's 55 and 65 and maybe 40 at night. You can feel the fall coming. You'll see stars like you'll never see down here in town. So it's just, for me, I look forward to it every year. It's kind of a seasonal thing that marks the seasons for
Yeah,
me.
I went once down in New Mexico. It wasn't the high country, but it was still fun. We got elk, but it was, I think, for me, it's like you're just saying that the high country is where it's at. I think
Mm.
as you're in the high country, it's just a magical spot. Whether you're just there camping, or taking photos, or hunting, whatever you're doing, it's just a
And the
magic.
aspens are changing color. So they're
Yep.
like gold and everything is changing. You'll see grouse, you'll hear coyotes at night, you'll see a few black bears. I was never a big backpacker just to go around
Yep.
camp spot to camp spot. Most of my backpacking has been in pursuit of elk, either with a bow or a rifle.
Right. Yeah. We did a vehicle. We were shooting right from the truck in New Mexico. A buddy of mine had access to a ranch. Still a beautiful country, and we drove all over the place, and
Yeah.
everybody got their elk. But it was kind of a different scene than when you walk. When you walk, you earn your keep. I mean, it's just you could put that physical effort in. It's a
Yeah,
different
it's funny.
animal.
It's a Wyoming thing. I grew up, like I said, on the East Coast. We had white-tailed deer. But when I got out to Wyoming, there's two big Christmases. There's the draw day, whether people are talking about
Mhm.
whether they got their
Right.
tags or not, and they speak in a vernacular I wasn't used to. They'll say, "What'd you draw?" And you'll hear that, especially this last week, because we just got our information, whether we've got antelope tags or elk tags.
Uh-huh.
So "what'd you draw" is like a way that you greet people.
Right.
And then people know what areas are which and which ones are prime
Right.
and which ones
Right.
are, you got to work harder in. And then opening day happens, and it's like another kind of holiday, or people say, "Did you get your elk?" It's kind of a conversation starter out here,
Hmm.
and it's,
Hmm.
it's part of the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's part of the best of the culture here.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And your saltwater fly fishing stories have real texture to them. What's one destination that completely blew you away or blew your expectations out of the water on the saltwater fishing? Because that's a whole different thing too, right? The fish are bigger, the tackle's
Yeah,
bigger,
the fish are bigger, the flies are bigger. And I've noticed, I
flies are
think
bigger.
older guys like bigger flies because they can get them on, they can tie them on.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
As you get older, you don't want to try to put a size 20 Adams on
Pretty tough.
5X tippet anymore. I think that's the thing with streamer fishing is as you get older, but also I like saltwater fishing because you can eat the fish. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't eat trout very often. So, but if I catch a corvina or something like that, I would say Magdalena Bay. It's another area. It's near Puerto San Carlos on the Pacific side of the Baja,
Hmm.
about halfway down. I've been doing a few trips there, and they take you out in pongas and you cast up into the mangroves, and they have something like 40 different species
Wow.
of saltwater fish. But when you find those corvina, they're in big schools and they're these real silver, beautiful fish. They don't jump like a trout, but they really run hard and they'll hit any kind of flashy fly, any kind of clouds or minnow.
Yep.
And like I was saying, they're just a beautiful fish, but you can keep a few of them. And in Mexico, they don't have the hang-ups we do. So if you bring the fresh fish to a small restaurant or
Right. They'll cook it
the
for you.
lodge where you're staying, they'll cook them for you that night.
Yeah.
And when I go to Mag Bay, I've been a few times, the generosity of the people, the variety of the seafood, because they have a bunch of shellfish that you can't get anywhere else. The value, because saltwater fishing has gotten so expensive in the States. Even in
Hmm.
Alaska's gotten really expensive for me. But in
Hmm.
the Baja, you can still afford to go out a few days and tip the captain. And
Hmm.
they're lovely people. I really enjoy that. And I have about maybe 200 words in Spanish that I can use. I mean, I'm not completely ignorant of the language, so I can string a few sentences together. And as long as we're talking about fishing, I usually kind of know what we're talking about.
Yeah. I
So
love it down there.
I love the whole thing about Baja.
Yeah. A good friend of mine just recently relocated to Loreto, and I go down there a lot. And we fished for bass and things off the coast there, and also in the bay. I caught my first rooster in the bay. That's a wild experience. You know.
Loretto's the jumping off spot. It's funny you mentioned that because I don't, there's not a lot of Americans that are flying in. This is a small airport. Loretto hasn't exploded yet. I think it's coming because I was
It's
just there a
coming.
few weeks ago and they're working on it. They're making the airport bigger and
Yep.
a bigger marina, but it's fun to go out and catch the yellowtail on bait.
Yeah. 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 It's a blast.
I'll have a fly fishing trip and fish with flies for a few days. And then at the very end of the trip, I'll go out with one of the captains and use like live mackerel and just try to catch a few yellowtail to bring back
Yep.
because that's hamachi.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
best. That's the best fish there is.
Yeah. I caught my first yellowtail down there too. I think it was a yellowtail, not a sea bass. But yeah, it's so relaxed down there. It's getting a little busy, like you say. There's more tourists coming down. That's why they're building it out. But it's just so different than the U.S. Everybody's whatever, man. Just have a beer. We'll figure it out.
You got to get used to that. Yeah, you got to get used to that. The fact the captains are pretty serious because
Oh yeah,
again,
they're
if
on
you
their game.
they're there.
Yeah.
But if a little thing breaks or like if the radio doesn't work that day, you don't need to panic.
Yep.
Their friends are out there, and these guys grew up on the water.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of confidence in these guys who they handle boats, and they know how to fix motors, they
Yep.
know how to like help each other out, and I just feel like it's a great deal. And the Sea of Cortez isn't usually rough;
Yep.
it's usually somewhat protected. Same with Mag Bay. When you
Yeah.
fish up in the estuaries, you're not dealing with a lot of like real big waves.
Yeah. No, it's a great place. That's one of my target spots for actually when I do officially retire. Just go relocate down there and take the
You know,
easy
the
life.
price of climbing. You and I are thinking the same way, but I've looked at the real estate and it's slowly climbing. It feels like it's staying enough out of reach, that it's
Yeah.
not going to be Loretto. It's going to be somewhere else because Loretto is starting to get almost kind of American prices.
It's getting discovered. And they got those cruise ships coming in there now too, so that's going to bump it up. Yeah. Is there a moment in your travels, or maybe a place or a person that you still find yourself thinking about or contemplating on the quiet days when you're out there at home?
Yeah, I thought I'd tell you about. I do. Trying to learn Spanish. I'm taking Spanish here at the college every semester because they give me a free class. But there's a group called
Nice.
ATMEX. It means Adventure Travel Mexico, and
Mm.
they are trying to promote some of the lesser traveled places instead of a lot of Americans go to Cabo, and a lot of us go to Puerto Vallarta, we go to Mexico City, but they have a conference every year in different cities, and they give you experiences as a writer to come in and meet people and go on tours. And
Huh.
I got to go to Oaxaca this past year,
Oh,
and
yeah. My buddy just got back from there, or he's on
it's a
his way back from
great
there.
town. But the first thing we did is we got in a van with one of the groups that runs hikes up in the mountains in these communities. And we went with an indigenous guide and we went and did 4 days where we walked from village to village with our backpacks. It was a bunch of writers. Most of them were either Spanish speaking or bilingual. I was the
Hmm.
dunce of the group, but I kind of got by. But it
Uh-huh.
was so peaceful to leave a town with your backpack on and then 6 hours later arrive at a town. They knew we were coming. They'd
Right.
called ahead.
Right.
And what I really loved about it was these little villages up in the mountains really prioritize community service. And they told us all about how if you want to live there and make money off the ecotourism or off the forest products or whatever, you have to do your years of service. You have to either work for the police force or work as a
Mm.
teacher or work in the hotel industry. So when we would get there, there was a common house in the middle of the village and people would be scurrying around to make us dinner. And we met local people. We met people that made different alcoholic beverages, not mezcal, much less,
Mm.
like about a 4% alcoholic beverage. I think it was called pulque. It was made
Okay.
out of the agave plant, but nothing more like a kombucha. But
Okay.
we met all these people that had all these incredible skills as far as farming in areas like that and existing in areas like that, herbal teas. It was so chill. I kind of needed it at the time of my life. It was just a few months ago, about three or
Oh,
four months
wow.
ago,
Hmm.
spring.
Yeah.
And I think about it a lot. I think they make their own bricks. When they build
Mm.
adobe buildings,
Hmm.
they make their own bricks. When they want wood for their beams, there's conifer trees. There's big, straight, beautiful wood up in these high mountains. And there's all these bromelia, these air plants. So when you get into the forest, it's just air plants everywhere you look and moss. And it's just a wild place that you would never think about in like
Oh,
southern Mexico.
yeah. Yeah. I have to get down there. My buddy Marty just got back. Marty Heister. I don't know if you know that name. He worked at Adventure 16 for a long time. He does a online magazine website, Mexico Experiences. I'll link to that in the show note, and I'll connect you guys.
Yeah, I wonder if he knows that same group that I'm talking
He
about.
probably does. Yeah,
Yeah.
he probably does. He's super knowledgeable. He's been down there a long time. He remember back in the day when you used to buy that big long wall map.
Yeah, I have one of Baja.
He and his girlfriend created that and
Yeah.
sold that up and down the peninsula and even in the U.S. Yeah,
Does it have all the dive spots? And
and all
because
the
the one I
spots.
have, it's funny, I have it taped in my room on my, like,
We
so I
all
can
did,
see it.
I think.
Yeah, I do. Not only do I remember that, I'm still living that right
You still
now.
have to use it. Right? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Hey there, Adventure Crew. Just a quick break to let you know you can be a part of the Outdoor Adventures Lifestyle Podcast in a big way. Each week, over 4,000 outdoor lovers, campers, hikers, and adventure travelers listen to the show. It's not a Joe Rogan-sized audience, but it's the right audience for you. You can talk about your brand, product, outdoor destination, or a new project launching soon. You could be in their ear holes every week. If you've got something our audience needs to hear about, let's talk. It's a great way to connect with our active outdoor adventure followers who live for the outdoors just like we do. Drop me an email, rick@ricksaez.com. Let's team up and get your brand, product, destination, or new project in front of your people today. Now let's get back to the show. So when you sit down to write an outdoor story, are you writing for yourself first? Or are you imagining the reader? Or are you worried about focused on the story?
If I'm hired and they kind of want coverage, I guess I could give you the example of Big Sky Journal wanted me to write about a small family-owned wool company up in Buffalo. It's
Uh-huh.
rural. They're hiring local people. They're using the local sheep. They're dyeing the stuff. They're fixing these machines that are 80 years old, and they're trying to get these rare parts. But it's just a kind of a cool story for Big Sky Journal, which is kind of a Western lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
I knew who I was writing it from. I knew what they wanted. But when I'm writing a story about like an adventure story, like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of echoing. It's not going away, and I feel like I need to write about that. I feel like my perfect reader in my mind is like one of the editors at Gray's or one of the editors at Tom, the editor at the Drake. I think, what would he think about it? I
Mm.
try to think about what a high quality magazine would think about what I'm writing here. Is this too sentimental? Is this too, you don't want to come off as sentimental or achieve this great thing. So I'm really kind of careful about the tone. So I think about that a lot. But my ideal reader is probably somebody that would actually spend 3 or 4 hours reading a copy of Gray's, cover to cover.
That's interesting that you focus on the reader because I do the same when I'm creating podcast questions and things. I focus on the ideal listener. I think that's where, because you've probably surveyed your readers and stuff. I kind of have an idea of who that is. And I figure if I target those, because there's a lot of them out there, right? And they all want the similar thing. So if you focus on that, you'll pretty much resonate with a broader audience.
If you read, if you're loyal to some of these magazines and you read them on the regular, you can pick up the cadence and the rhythm and
Yep.
the theme, even though it's not like explicitly spelled out. There's like a quality, there's the thing that they avoid, there's the thing. And so once you figure that out, you can kind of mimic's not the right word, but you can figure out how to jive with
Mm-hmm.
that theme and with the problem is you want to write something new. So maybe incrementally you can pop some things in there because my favorite writers are people that say things and sometimes they say outrageous things. I mean, one of my favorite writers is Tom McGuane. He says
Oh yeah.
outrageous things about fishing.
Yeah.
He says he spells it out. It's so honest. And I'm just thinking to myself, what magazine editor let him say that? Because sometimes if you say how ridiculous this is to dress up in all this equipment and have $1,000 rods and then release the fish
Yeah.
at the end anyways, it does seem so ridiculous sometimes. Sometimes you wonder, how will the advertising branch of that magazine feel about that? If you're kind of making fun of $1,000 rods,
Yeah.
they may
Yeah.
want to sell some $1,000 rods.
You know
So
they do. Yeah.
you got to be kind of careful about how you talk about stuff, but at the same time, you got to push it a little bit. You can't just continually tell, hey, my grandfather took me fishing and therefore I fish. You can't do that forever. We got to find new ways to kind of get an edge.
Yeah, yeah. And you probably do that too. I think part of that too is A, learning your craft, but then B, doing it for so long and the relationship with these magazines and editors, they'll let you run a little bit. They'll let you throw something out there that might be a little controversial because they know you're not going to do it every time. You're not going to do a big old essay. You might put a one-liner in there and away it goes. And it's appropriate for the article.
Especially if you make fun of yourself. You
Yeah.
go all the way on a fishing trip and you forget your reel or something like that. If
Right,
you're
right.
making fun of yourself, I think you get more leeway with that kind of thing.
I'll bet that makes sense. And many of your stories read like small tributes to forgotten places and everyday people. How important is it for you to celebrate the overlooked or underappreciated outdoor life or the
You
underappreciated
know,
activities or people or places in our outdoor lives?
so like I arrived here from Newport, I came to Wyoming from Newport News, Virginia. It has its ups and downs economically. It seems to
Hmm.
have really progressed. But when I grew up there, there wasn't much to do. That there was kind of like a working class town, and it was the whole all of our future was based on whether we had
Mm.
contracts or not. It was a giant shipbuilding
Yep.
operation. When I arrived in Laramie, I kind of saw something similar, kind of a rundown, kind of
Mm.
a Laramie has a beautiful university, but it also has kind of the other side of the tracks. And even though I had a master's degree, I was making such miserable money. I was a replacement for faculty that wanted to go on sabbatical. I had to work in the West Laramie Fly Shop, and I worked in the store, and it basically was like a little convenience store that sold licenses and
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
rifles and ammo. And I got a lot of material out of just knowing the other clerks that worked in there and
I'll
knowing the
bet.
people that came in, selling fishing licenses in the summer to big groups of people and giving some information out and withholding others. It was kind of a fun, exotic place for me to be.
You probably
You
got
know,
the story of Laramie from all the people you worked with that lived there for
yeah,
so long. That's
and
interesting. Yeah.
we went out and tried it all. We
Uh-huh.
tried ice fishing and we'd hear there were brook trout up in this pond somewhere and we would go and test it out on our days off. And there's nothing expensive about that kind of lifestyle. I
Right.
was living on burritos and whatever, and
Burritos and beer. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
was on the campus all the time. And when I wasn't on the campus, we were up doing that kind of stuff in the outdoors. And then I found out that from the 30, 40 minutes away from Laramie, there were elk. So suddenly
Hmm.
I went and bought a secondhand bow and we never got any elk, but
Yeah.
it was exciting to be
Yeah.
there when they're screaming at you with their bugle and they're raging and they're thrashing the brush and you can see
Right.
them, but they're out of range. But it was just exciting to live in there. So when I think of Laramie, people think it's just maybe this podunk town and this kind of place that they wouldn't live. When I think about it, it was very exotic for me, especially
Mm.
when you want to do outdoor stuff. All
Hmm.
that public land, every direction, everywhere you set off, there was beaver ponds and streams. And once you got into the national forest, you had this feeling like you could go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
And that was it. I just went crazy for it because I did not have that on the East Coast.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's kind of why I ended up in Bishop, because I grew up in Fontana, California, which is the Inland Empire, and it's just concrete jungle, we used to call it, still
Yeah,
call it. And getting up to Bishop was just, my grandfather lived up there. So as a kid, same thing. There was nothing there then. It's not much more developed now, but LA owns all the land. They're not going to develop it. They need all the land for the water. So they don't want anybody sipping on the straw. So it'll be like
right.
that a lot. But it's just, you're right. You can go get lost. You can go wander, so to speak, and find all kinds of different things to get into. It's,
We had the gazetteers, the big paper maps with all
uh-huh,
the,
uh-huh.
we wrote on them.
Yeah.
There's a few of me and some friends from the fly shop and a couple ne'er-do-wells from the university, but we had beat up little four-cylinder trucks. And I just never,
Scrape
I
together
never,
the
yeah, when I
gas.
go to an expensive lodge, I'm uncomfortable because
Yeah.
I mean, these are like people that have had huge success financial. And I've always been more comfortable with kind of bumming around and keeping it low key and improvising. The group that I meet up with down in Baja is the San Diego Fly Fishers.
Oh, yeah.
And they come down in 15, 16 different trucks. They come down, they camp on the ground. They have big group meals. They just, everybody helps out. If somebody has a broken reel or something like that, somebody lends them, but it's just very communal and very low key. And
Yep.
it avoids all that. There's something about fly fishing that sometimes can seem kind of elite
Yep.
and get very elite, private water and that kind of stuff. The way I learned it in Laramie, and it's not necessarily like a forgotten place, but it's kind of a place you wouldn't say, "Oh my God, I got to go." Same with Casper's, very working class. Nobody like really brags or shows off in a community like this. It doesn't fly
Right.
really
Doesn't happen.
well.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And on the stream, the drift boats give the waiters, the people that are waiting, give them plenty of room.
Yep.
It seems to be in some ways working out on that way.
Yeah.
And not to get political, but this state erupted when last week when they were talking about selling that public land.
I
This
bet.
state erupted.
I bet. Yeah. Rightfully. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we're in a tough time right now. It's going to be wild. I don't want to get into politics either, but
Yeah.
that could be a whole nother show.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty concerning.
Yeah.
So let's see. I don't think I asked this one yet, but I'm going to skip that one. So, do you have a favorite off the grid experience that reminds you of why you love this outdoor lifestyle? Something that just, like the place we were just talking about. You just go out there and you go there because there's nothing there. There's nobody, nothing there but nature. There's all this wild land, wild animals, great places to camp. I have this place called Campsite A up in the Eastern Sierra, which not too many people know about, and it's kind of a secret spot that we discovered. But it's a place where we could go and get off the grid, so to speak, and experience that wildness, so to speak.
Mine is probably Bondurant, Wyoming, which is
Mm.
over it's a small little tiny little town south of Jackson, over on the Idaho border. And it's the Wyoming range, it's the mountains there. And I can go find the camp rings where I've camped
Wow.
various years, elk hunted, and I can have all these memories. That's where you have to bring in your own water pump and you have to walk. There's no real established trails, no horse trails. It's pretty brutal. I think my days are numbered as far as going up in there. There's been some discussion of whether we're going this year or not.
Mm.
The guys are about my age. It's really hard on you. But when I think about those wild experiences, sitting there at night listening to elk bugle,
Yep.
maybe 200 yards away from your camp, and then they start getting into it. You hear their antlers starting to whack together because the bulls are rutting and
Yeah.
actually pushing each other around. And the bears we've seen and all that. It took a tank of gas to get over there, and it took you throwing on your backpack and walking, and you could
Right.
get there. It wasn't I didn't have to take an airline ticket.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. And then some weekends we went, and other weekends we didn't. I used to go several weekends during the bow season. Then I'd always want to be there for the opener for rifle season. But I got really familiar with it. And so when I think about it now, I can picture those campsites. I know where they are. I could take
Yep.
you to them. But could I take you there with a backpack on my back? And could I stay comfortably very much longer? I think that kind of hunting is going to be harder for me to do as I'm getting older. It's
Yeah.
just harder on the body.
Yeah, that happens, I think. But you'll find ways to get in there. I mean, it just might take you a couple days to get in there. I mean, you might have to
Yeah.
slow down.
I've shifted down and I'm hunting down more near Saratoga. It's a little bit easier. There's a lot of elk down there. It's not as up and down as the Wyoming range is pretty brutal. It's up and down. Over in the Saratoga area, it's more plateau. There's a little bit of slope here and there, and I like it. I've been successful there. I'm finding the elk. I think I can handle that. Also, if I'm by myself, I do a little bit of elk hunting by myself. It's not the greatest way to do it, but I've done
Yeah.
that a little bit. And when you get one by yourself, it's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a lot of
you're
work.
busy for a while,
Yeah. Yeah. That takes days, right? I mean,
a day at least. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That's wild. Yeah. So, how about some advice and reflection for folks that are listening who love to write or they think they might want to? What advice would you give them about telling honest, compelling outdoor stories?
Well, first, I'm an English major. I took a lot of English classes. I read a
Oh,
lot,
okay.
and
Uh-huh.
I'm still a big reader. I love Jim Harrison. I love novels. I love French writers. I love all the classics, the Brits, everything. So I read a lot, and that's my career. My career is teaching composition, teaching English, teaching creative writing. I think a lot of people, oh, I'm not very good at it, or maybe I can't, but have they ever really sat down and tried? And has
Right.
a professor or a teacher ever sat with them and is there time in class anymore to go over a poem by Robert Frost with a kid? I don't know
Probably,
what the curriculum looks like,
probably not. Yeah.
but that stuff, Robert Frost isn't an outdoor writer, but I mean, he used the outdoors and he used New
Hmm.
England as a landscape, and same with
Hmm.
Walt Whitman. And I was reading all that stuff all through grad school, and I was reading Field and Stream as a kid. Whenever I was
Same.
sick and
Hmm.
stayed home, yeah, whenever I
Yep.
was sick and stayed home, my mom would buy me Field and Stream, and I would read these about these wild places and these wild adventures. And
Yep.
but I was so into writing. I had a literary interest. I published like narrative memoir stuff in like the Sun magazine, which is an ad-free magazine out of Chapel Hill.
Hmm.
It's highly regarded. And I worked really hard on my craft with poetry. And I just shifted those skills over to the outdoor writing space and actually started getting paid for it. I was like, wow, you can get a check for writing about this great elk hunt that you went on and had a great time. I also think that sometimes people think that you have to be super successful in the outdoors and the greatest fly fisherman. I am not. I am average in all these things. I think I go a lot, but I think I'm not great with a bow. I don't tie my own flies. I'm just average in all these things. I think I'm a better writer than I am an outdoors person.
Hmm.
And these magazines will look at and accept articles where you go fishing and it doesn't turn out actually that's kind of a genre
Yeah.
where it doesn't turn out. It's kind of like a genre where it didn't turn out exactly the way you wanted it to, but it turned out and you still managed to get something valuable from it. I think people overlook that and they think, since I didn't get a trophy deer, therefore this season I can't write an article. You can write an article. You can write about failure.
Yeah. When stuff hits a fan, that's a story, right? When things go wrong, that's a story. When things break, I mean, sometimes those are some of the best stories. They're great stories when it all works out and you went to where you want. It was great camping and you shot the deer, got the fish. It's wonderful. But there's almost more story when something breaks down and you got to leave the car. I'm still going to go get the deer. So we'll get the car later. When you walk in and all those things.
Yeah, the little side adventures and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
different improvisations are kind of make it more interesting. I would give this advice also. Maybe don't travel with too many other outdoor writers because before you get home, they'll already have two drafts about what you just did. I have a friend, Rich
That's
Chiappon. We
good.
love to. He's a good writer. He's prolific, and we like to travel around together. And we just got back from Mexico, and I don't know, it was 12 hours after I got back. I still had sand in my luggage, and he sent me the first rough draft about our story. And the thing is, there's only so many editors that we know.
Yeah.
And he was doing the disaster. This went wrong. He was doing that kind of
Yeah.
story. He and I have read a lot of stories about things going wrong or not catching very many fish. We've kind of perfected that.
That's good.
But yeah, it's cool. But I feel like I travel that the most, maybe one or two writers, because if you go with the whole crowd of people on a press trip,
That'd be
you just kind
tough.
of wonder, what am I going to do when I try to want to sell this and like actually make this thing valuable, get a
Right.
publication out?
Yeah. How am I going to differentiate my angle? Yeah. That'd be tough.
The good thing about that is if you have other writers in your life, which I've always had, is they will read drafts for you. I can't tell you how much I
Oh,
use somebody
right.
like
Right.
Rich to read my stuff before I send it to an editor at Gray's or something like that. I do not trust myself to see my own typos, but more than that, to maybe always hit the mark right. I do use outside. I've always used outside readers before I send stuff to an editor. I always want somebody who knows the subject pretty well to read it so it doesn't come off as like overly sentimental or maybe
Hmm.
you really don't want it to be like bragging or braggadocious. So it's real
That's
important to
smart.
have writers in your life for that.
Yeah. That's really smart. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. That's a good resource to have. You have friends
And
like that.
as I got later in my career, I would like to say this, like joining the OWAA was cool because not everybody in there is hunting and fishing. There's kayakers, photographers,
Yep.
birders, and it's actually given me a lot of leads and a lot of ideas. And it's
Hmm.
actually provided a lot of resources for continuing my career and actually writing for some nonprofit places.
It's a really great group. When we get together at those conferences, I mean, there's just so much interaction and so much knowledge that changes hands. And like you say, it changes heads too. You just get different perspectives, which is, I think, the best thing. because you just learn different ways of seeing things, doing things you haven't thought of. It's a great group.
Right.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
trying to make that conference this year, but I think I'm going to miss it. All right, last one. What's still on your bucket list? Is there anything, places or stories that you haven't gotten to?
As much as I've said I'm kind of against the jumping on the plane and going 10,000 miles and all that, I think there's a lot of like adventure to have in your own little state, in your own little area that you can go up and camp on public land. But it's just, I've had a friend, I met this guy, Justin Witt. I met him on a trout stream on the Russian River in Alaska. And it's like the only friend I've ever made on a trout stream. Usually you look at everybody as a competition, but he stopped and we started talking. I was like, man, this guy reads and he's read magazines, and we started talking for a while. And then we met up and fished the next day. And I think I forgot my bear spray. This was like in Alaska, and he hung with me so that I felt safe enough to be out there. But
Oh, cool.
he's been living in Argentina the last 6 or 8 years, and he's
Nice.
guiding and trout fishing down there. And he's telling me I really need to come, not in the middle of the season, but maybe like April, which is like their fall.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, when am I ever going to have a chance to do that again? It's big, huge trout. There's quail hunting down there.
Wow.
There's all kinds of landscape that it looks like the Yukon almost. These big sawtooth peaks and lakes and streams.
Wow.
And I love Spanish, and I know it's a different accent in Argentina, but I mean, I'm
You can
working
get
the
it.
Spanish thing. Anywhere
Yeah,
that
you'll
they're
get it.
speaking Spanish, I want to go.
Yeah.
Different
Food's great.
culture. And so, I mean, the ticket is staggering, but a plane ticket is staggering for
Bet.
somebody that teaches at a public institution.
I'll
But
bet.
when is it going to happen again?
Yeah.
I'm really thinking that.
Especially
I wanna
now,
try-
right? You want to get down there before it gets even more discovered, and
Yeah.
or some political thing changes the whole landscape. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's dry fly fishing for really large rainbows, things I haven't caught, the giant ones. And
Yeah.
a little of that, a little bit of hunting, and a little bit of Argentine culture. I think I could do worse.
A little red wine. Yeah, man, that'd be at the top of my list.
Yeah.
I'd be scrimping. I'd be eating oatmeal to make that ticket work.
Yeah. I'm thinking hard about it. What would I have to do to
Yeah.
do it? But you definitely need 10 days because it's 2 days getting there and a day and a half getting back. So you can't just do it. You can't do it over like a spring break or something like that. You need a chunk of time.
Yeah, that's a good one. Next time I talk to you, maybe you'll have done that and we'll have some other stories to tell.
That's true. Hopefully so. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Lifestyle Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, ricksaez.com, where you'll find show notes and links to everything we talked about and more. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, give us a rating on Apple Podcast or spread the word and tell a friend. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week, and thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Adventure Lifestyle Podcast.